So obviously there were a lot of problems that happened last year for the Cleveland Browns, and to blame it all on one person would just be silly. So while I think the people that are going to blame it all on Baker Mayfield are dumb, I also think that we have to be fair here and say, listen, this wasn't not Baker Mayfield's fault either. I mean, he at times was not very good. I mean, if you want to look at passer rating, for example, passer rating is an admittedly flawed stat, but just to give you some sort of context, his passer rating last year was 78.8, which was 31st in the NFL, behind guys like Kyle Allen, Mason Rudolph, and Mitchell Trubisky. He threw for 22 touchdowns and 21 interceptions, which is incredibly high. I mean, the only reason why people didn't talk more about his interceptions were because Jameis Winston was throwing 18 a game. But really, I do feel like I think that's worth mentioning. But also, a guy like Jameis Winston was also throwing. He was throwing 8.2 yards per attempt, whereas Mayfield was throwing just 7.2 yards per attempt. So definitely, statistically, this was a bad year. So what happened? What went wrong? Well, let's get into it. I feel like this play is a very good example of showing just nobody, except for maybe Jameis, threw more "what are you doing" throws. I mean, I would say probably Winston had more, but Mayfield was definitely number 2 in that category. This is a good example where it's going to be play action, and his first read is going to be the route that's going to be over the middle because, with the play action, some linebackers could get out of position. And if that doesn't work, he also has a deep route, which that's just his second read on this play. And after the ball is snapped, you're going to notice that Mayfield, he looks toward the middle of the field, and this isn't really open. Linebacker did a good job of getting back, so okay, that's fine. Not every play is going to work out. So you shouldn't look at that first read. You should get on to the second read. But if you look at the second read, that is also not open. I mean, Richard Sherman is back there, and he has about a 5-yard cushion deep, and since it's going to be a go route, neither one of these two reads are open, and really for Mayfield, it's, try to scramble to get some yards or just throw the ball away. However, he doesn't even really look at the second read. He kind of just throws it up there while under pressure, and it results in an interception. Just not a smart play there by Mayfield. I mean, when Richard Sherman has a 5-yard cushion, it's a go route, you don't throw it in that direction. That's just a recipe for disaster. It just is. I think what's really unique about that play is the fact that, he tried to get off to a second read, but didn't do a very good job and kind of just had to get there and throw it immediately. And I think where Baker Mayfield really does struggle is post-snap reads more so than pre-snap reads. His pre-snap reads are great. Like, for his age, he's great at pre-snap reads. It's his post-snap reads that really could use some work, I think. And I think this play is going to be a good example of that, where it's going to be man coverage, and there is a safety who's deep, but he's closer to the top of the screen, or top half of the screen, as I like to say. And what you're going to notice is that there's going to be a receiver who runs towards the sideline on the bottom of the screen, so that's where you should definitely look to throw the ball to. It's a good route against this type of coverage, and Mayfield knows it, so as you notice, he is going to look in that direction, but the problem is that there's pressure coming right now. This play takes a little bit of time to develop, and with the pressure coming, he just doesn't really have the time to try and make this play. I mean, what he's going to actually do is step up into the pocket a little bit, so he's going to give himself a little bit more time. That happens right after this point, but he's only going to get a little bit longer. What he really should do in the process of stepping up in the pocket is just take the check down at this point. It's a 3rd down and 4, so there is no guarantee that this check down will get you a first down, but it's possible. It seems like I would probably say maybe you have like a 50% chance of getting the check down, maybe 40% chance, but of getting the first down with the check down, I mean to say. So it seems like that's what he should do. However, what you're going to notice him doing instead is he steps up and then just going to try and scramble and runs right into a New England player and gets a sack. Again, it's that kind of thing where I just feel like sometimes I almost wonder if the game is just moving too fast for him in certain areas, especially like a play like this. Sometimes he looks great, but typically when he looks great, it's almost against poorer defenses, and I'll get into that in a second. But I think that you see him just, he looks like a young player out there sometimes, which isn't a terrible thing. I mean, listen, he does make a decent amount of his reads pretty well, and, he is young, and the good thing about, sometimes not making the best post-snap reads is that's something you can absolutely improve on compared to, if he wasn't accurate, well, then it's game over. And he is accurate with the football. But I think that, he doesn't always make those reads. And I think that typically he does I would almost say he does a bad job at making the difficult post-snap reads. I think he very rarely is able to do that. Again, they're difficult for a reason, but it seems like he struggles in this regard. And this is an example where it's going to be a cover 2 man with an extra player dropping back into coverage. So there's going to be someone over the middle of the field as well. And those are the routes that the Cleveland Browns players will be running. And so, it's really, just looking at it on paper, you would think that the 2 routes that you would want to look to throw to would be either the route that's going to be over the middle or the route that's going deep towards the sideline on the bottom of the screen. The reason being there's only one safety who is deep in that area, but with those 2 players deep, one of them is guaranteed to have a one-on-one matchup. It makes some sense. And what you're going to notice is that on the bottom of the screen, this can work out. It honestly kind of looks like it's maybe trying to be a pick play this far down the field, which you don't see happen too often. But again, this is the kind of thing that it absolutely can work out, because a player is going to cut towards the sideline. And also, I mean, yes, there is another New England player in the area, but, it's something that can work out. It has a chance of working out. It's definitely a risky play, but they're also down 14 at this point. It's about 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So I think this is worth the risk to make this throw. But the key thing to watch is that on the top of the screen, you notice that there's going to be a New England safety who's going to crash a lot closer towards the middle of the field, meaning that you basically have a one-on-one matchup further down the field and a route that's better. So really, that's where Baker Mayfield should be throwing. Instead, he makes the more risky throw, which results in what could have been an interception right there and probably should have been an interception. And again, it's just the kind of thing where it's like, on one hand, that's kind of a difficult thing to look at, but at the same time, I mean, a smarter veteran player, what they would have done is they would have noticed the 3-man rush and said, hey, I have a little bit more time here. Why don't I check in on a different read just to see if that's going to be more open, or maybe look up at the safeties, see what they're doing, and then look over at the route you want to throw to and then throw it there. Or if you notice something when you look at a different route or look at the safeties, well, then you can maybe find a play that had a better chance of working. But Baker Mayfield, he never took his eyes off of the read he wanted to make. So again, this is a nitpick, admittedly. This play is especially a nitpick, but that's kind of my thing, is that sometimes there's a very fine line between being great and being just okay. And, Baker doesn't want to just be okay. You're not going to win a Super Bowl if he's just okay. He is going to have to improve on these things to some degree. I'm not saying that, he has to make this play every single time. It's a tough play. I get that. But you would like to see him make plays like this more often than he does, I think. I think some people have talked about, well, we'll see if Baker can go back to how he played his rookie season because, his rookie season, he was very good. And so maybe it was a Freddie Kitchens problem. And to some degree, I think that it's hard to imagine him actually being who he was last season. I think he'll get better. I do. But that being said, I also do think that there were some problems his rookie season as well that he was able to just get away with. And I think that, the problems were definitely there. And it's part of the reason why last year I said the Browns weren't going to make the playoffs. And part of the reason I said was because I thought Baker Mayfield would throw too many interceptions. That's what I said. And, not to pat myself on the back too much for that. But I was, that was definitely a concern I had. And I think it's a concern I still have. And this is an example of what I was just talking about, where it's going to be a cover 1 play. They're going to run play action and to have a receiver running deep over the middle. So typically that route wouldn't really work out too well. But what's going to happen is that after the ball is snapped, Mayfield fakes the handoff. There's immediate pressure, but he gets around it. So now he's running, he's on the move. But what you notice is that there is a Cleveland player who is deep, who is open, because the Atlanta safety is just being a complete moron on this play, to be quite honest. I mean, he should not be running towards the bottom of the screen at this point. Mayfield is running to the top of the screen, so he's not going to make a throw across his body, which would be, 60 yards total to try and get there. It's just not a throw he's going to end up making. So you shouldn't be going over there. However, he is, which now means that Mayfield has a window where he can try and make this throw, and he's going to make it. So, he takes it's a high-risk play, and it's a very difficult play, but he was able to get it, and they get a touchdown, which on one hand is like, wow, what a tremendous play. But at the same time, that's just not something that you can do consistently. And, it did kind of come back to bite him a little bit last year. And it came back to bite him in 2018 sometimes. I think, when you're playing for a bad team, people only really notice the positives, but there were some negatives. I mean, the game against Houston, I thought, was a great example where, this play, it's going to be a cover 2 zone. There's an extra player dropping back into coverage. So, again, an extra person in coverage, and there's the route that he wants to throw to. It's over the middle. Typically, this route is okay against cover 2. There typically are gaps where you can try to make this throw. But with the extra player dropping back into coverage, those gaps are going to get a lot tighter, and it's going to be a much more difficult throw to make. I mean, as you see, maybe there's a window, but Zach Cunningham of the Houston Texans is right in front of that window. It's going to take a miracle throw to make, and maybe there isn't even a throw to be made here. However, again, Baker Mayfield, he doesn't say no very often. He doesn't give up on plays very often. He fires one anyways, and it is intercepted and returned for a touchdown. And this is really what he just has to work on, sometimes you got to throw the ball away. Sometimes you got to take a check down, and you just got to make smarter decisions. And I think that, on one hand, yes, it's a real problem, and it can lose you football games. But on the other hand, I mean, it is the kind of thing where it's learnable. This is not a death sentence by any means, but it's learnable. I kind of get annoyed when people talk about Baker Mayfield and say his problem is he's on social media too much. No, it isn't. No, that's fine. Let him get mad at Colin Cowherd. Who cares? All I do is talk about what I see on tape. And his tape last year wasn't pretty, and his tape 2 years ago was, it had some really high moments and some really low moments. There are, other factors, for a lot of this. I mean, I do think that having Freddie Kitchens hurt. I'm not going to totally discount that. I think that the poor offensive line hurt, but at the same time, I mean, he still had a great running game. And he still had great receivers. And I think sometimes he's going to have to learn to sort of be a quote-unquote game manager as opposed to playing hero ball sometime. And sometimes let the offense run through Chubb. And I actually think that Stefanski could do that a lot more, which I think would help Baker Mayfield. I actually, again, this video seems like it's a negative on Mayfield. I actually think this should be viewed as a positive because all of his problems are very learnable, and we can pretend like he didn't play bad last year, but that's not true. He did play bad last year. But if you look at it, most of these problems are going to be able to be solved, and I think that especially with a more of a running focused offense, it could be a perfect thing for Mayfield. The question is just going to be, is he still going to make these mistakes? So I think that's what we'll have to wait and see for in 2020. But that's just what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.